Every iteration of the Forza Horizon games has always been met with, how do you do better than this the next time around? Developer Playground Games have seemingly perfected the open world racing game every single time that they've tried it, and following Forza Horizon 3 set in Australia, it was kind of hard to see where they could go next with it that would elevate it rather than iterate upon it. And somehow, once again, they've done it here. Forza Horizon 4, to me, before I get into why, it is the best open world racing game ever made. It is one of the most enjoyable open world games ever, and it just solidifies itself as one of the core staples of racing games in general. Forza Horizon 4 takes its way to Great Britain and takes with it the English countryside as well as some urban areas, and the main city being Edinburgh. The world itself isn't as diverse as Australia, which had tropical and city and desert. Here you have countryside and city, but it is absolutely beautiful. The engine, the Turn 10 engine that they use, has been just built on in this generation to such an incredible degree that on Xbox One X it is absolutely stunning. Now you have two modes on Xbox One X, which is quality and performance. For the sake of this review, I moved it over to performance, which makes the output at 1080p 60 frames a second with some settings turned down. On quality mode it goes up to 4K 30 with added visual enhancements, and I have to say it is unbelievably beautiful at 4K 30. But I do think that the best way to play is 4K 60 on a PC, if your PC can handle it. However, the game is incredibly well optimized, so if you have a decent rig it may be possible, but regardless, if you're even on a base Xbox One, this game still looks fantastic. It's just console wise, it's definitely best on Xbox One X. Playground Games with the Forza series, they've made the Horizon has usually been a yearly thing, like it happens once a year, you're there to celebrate the Horizon Festival. Here they've made it an all-round year thing, and the reason why they've done that is that Forza Horizon 4 introduces seasons, and the first 4 or 5 hours feels almost like a massive tutorial, as they introduce you to all the different race types like drag, like street racing, like dirt, the showcase events, and so much more, like speed traps, speed zones, drift zones. There's a lot of different activities to do here, big and small. But the opening few hours, you'll build up influence, and as you do that, you'll hit certain milestones and eventually go through the 4 seasons. And the 4 seasons are definitely not just a visual thing. It's not just, oh, there's leaves on the ground, it's quite brown, it's autumn, or hey, there's snow on the ground, it's winter. It changes the gameplay to the extent that during the winter there's a massive lake that's frozen over, which you can now visit, or at least drive on. And even stuff like spring and summer, they do an incredible job of really getting that sense of the seasons, which is kind of unusual to say, like, but a cold, brisk winter morning definitely looks different to a summer morning or a spring morning, and I think they've done an excellent job, and they've captured the skybox of each of those seasons and implemented it so well into the game that, like, you really get the sense of it being that season. And that's one of the sort of smallest things, I guess, about a game, but at the same time it's done so well, it's just, it has to be mentioned. But once you go through those 4 few hours, the seasons are no longer connected to your personal progress. Instead, you're then entered into this essentially open world multiplayer lobby, where seasons change every single week, which does bring you back to the game. And having only played the game now for a couple of weeks, I haven't had the chance to sort of see all the unique aspects to these seasons once it's in the shared world. You have exclusive events so far for each season, as well as exclusive barn finds, and barn finds from return from previous games, where they will give you an area on the map to look for a barn, and in it will be an old or classic or really powerful car. Once you find that, after a few minutes or whenever, you will then have that car added to your garage. It seems like with the seasons here, once the season goes away, you have to wait a few weeks for that car to be claimed again. But they do such a great job, to be honest, of making this shared world or open multiplayer world so much more enjoyable than I was expecting. We've had open world shared multiplayer racing games with stuff like The Crew before, Test Drive Unlimited, Burnout, but I think here they've done such an incredible job of it. You have things like Forzathon Live, which may sound a bit silly, but what happens is every single hour a part on the map opens up for you to go to, and everyone who's in it can take part in a series of rounds where everyone has to come together to sort of hit certain goals. They could be going through speed traps at a certain time, and the speeds are all added up, or it's about getting certain skill points or anything like that. Or there's a large number of things that you can they can give you, and they're not particularly hard, but what they do is they give a great sense of community here. You also obtain Forzathon points by doing this, which then allows you to buy exclusive clothes and horns and other cosmetics. There is the wheel spin, and there's also the super wheel spin, which is sort of a randomized thing where you can get a car or credits or items. None of it can be used with real money. It's all from in-game completion of missions or going through certain disciplines and reaching certain levels. You can buy some of the stuff through the Forzathon points, or you can use the super wheel. You get enough of them as you go. But other than that, in the gameplay, you do have this massive open world. As you go, you unlock skill points as you did before, except this time around they unlock a lot quicker. That's because every single car you own has its own skill tree. That may sound overwhelming, but you earn them at such a rapid rate. It's totally fine, and it's not a massive tree. It's like about a dozen skills or so, and they do change things up, like you can earn extra skill or extra influence, and influence is essentially XP, and that's totally fine. But the progression of the game is handled a lot better than previous titles, and to me this is the biggest change, even potentially over the seasons, is that you're no longer just bombarded with a ton of icons of all these different events. Instead, every single discipline, whether it's dirt racing or off-road or street, or there's a fair few there. It's a great actually mix of different events, and as you progress you level up in them, and as you level up in them, more will be provided, rather than having 20 of them on the map at any one time and just feel completely overwhelmed. They trickle out, and it gives a great sense of progression as well. It gives a sense that the game is so much more to it than, well, it always has, but now it kind of feels much more sustainable, and something you can play for the long term. And that definitely feels the way they want Forza Horizon to be. It seems like they want you to continually return to it, and essentially, especially by the sense that seasons take one real week to change each time. And there's just so much to do and enjoy in this game, and I haven't even talked about like just exploring the world and unlocking, like you've 200 billboards or billiards to smash. There's beauty spots. The world is absolutely stunning. Like it's just such a beautiful game. There's so many incredible effects, from the water during spring on the rain is just so beautiful. So is when the sun is just casting across the field in front of you. The same when it's heavy rain and it's dark. The same when it's snow, and it's just one of the most visually stunning games, and gameplay wise the most satisfying racing game I've ever played. Forza Horizon 4 is definitely the best open world racing game ever, as I iterated, but I think it stands up as one of the greatest racing games ever released, period. And it's something I'll definitely be returning to. It's something I'll probably do an update video on down the road, where I go over what's changed, what's been added, because it's just a game that you can easily return to and discover new things for many months to come.